Support for Internal Comms Pro comes from Circle. Support for this episode is provided by Circle, a platform built for the busy internal communicator. Circle saves you an average of 46 hours a month through drag-and-drop email that looks beautiful on all devices, real-time actionable engagement metrics, and a variety of features built with internal communications in mind. Visit circle.com, that's CERKL.com, to discover how to evaluate and simplify your internal communications.
I'm Sara Jackson. Welcome to Internal Comms Pro, the podcast. I'm on the road this season to talk to the experts that can help internal communicators face their biggest challenges. The time has come to raise the internal knowing of the value that lies within.
I believe that internal communications people can be, if they choose to be, right, can be strategists, and they actually can influence the bottom line. You know, I think as communicators, I feel like we're on this cusp, especially in the internal paradigm, right? Like, we always have the conversation of, we want to be a strategic partner. We always want a seat at the table. But I feel like we are just right there in our industry of it's just about to shift. And part of that is technology.
Digital transformation. We live in a day and age where organizations need to solve for the increasing pressure to deliver a more connected, personalized experience for their employees. But internal communicators aren't the only ones feeling the pressure. IT decision makers are involved in digital transformation initiatives at their respective organizations. They're tasked with the pressure to modernize the employee experience in order to compete with the employees' consumer experiences. So I wondered, was this the opening for internal communicators to show their value? I needed more information. I needed to know how to really crack the code on how to approach and work with IT. So you know how you're just drawn to that colleague who seems like they have it all together, and you just long for them to whisper in your ear the answers to the test of how they figured it all out? Well, I found that person. Natalie Guzman is the Senior Vice President of Internal Communications for Fifth Third Bank. Now let me tell you about Fifth Third Bank. It traces its origins to the Bank of the Ohio Valley, which opened its doors in Cincinnati in 1858. That's right, I said 1858. In 1871, the Bank of the Ohio Valley was purchased by the Third National Bank. Well, with the turn of the century came the union of the Third National Bank and the Fifth National Bank, and eventually the organization became known as Fifth Third Bank. Now, Fifth Third Bank operates nearly 1,500 full-service banking centers and nearly 2,500 ATMs. They have over 20,000 employees, and Natalie is the person who oversees communicating with those employees. She gave me the answers to the test on how to work with IT, and in the end, it unearthed that our common pressure, this digital transformation, is actually our common denominator, and where our answers lie. This insight and much more on today's show.
Figuring out how to engage the right way is really comes down and boils down to relationships, as you alluded to. But I think with IT, really probably specifically IT, I think there's sometimes a challenge for communicators to feel like they kind of have a seat at the table, and do they understand the tech tools and the tech stack that's being built at the organization that they currently work for? Do they know how to engage in that? And I think becoming a part of the conversation when it comes to IT and how that can influence communications. And then that really starts dovetailing then into the HR side of, okay, how does this impact our employee base? Because really IT and HR are focused on the employee. And I think it comes down to we've got to think like a business owner almost, like, and that may be oh, that may feel uncomfortable to some, or like, ooh, how do I even think about that? Because we have customers too. We're internal, but we have customers, and they are internal customers. And almost thinking of it as your own business or your own agency. And what would I do if I was building that business? Well, one of the first things you're going to do is you're going to go learn, right? What are the challenges? What are the goals? What are my IT partners or my HR business partners? What are they trying to accomplish? So I think we have an onus and something that we've got to step into as communicators, that we've got to go find that out. We can't assume that everyone's sitting around wanting us, to do our jobs in the best way and come to us with the great tools and everything. I think it's engaging in the right conversations. Let's talk to our IT partners and find out, what are they trying to accomplish? What tools are they already looking at, maybe for even other business units that you may be able to tap into as a communicator? So it really does get back to relationships again, right? Like finding out what people are trying to accomplish, what are their goals, their aspirations. And if you can start engaging in a conversation like that, that's going to get you to a point of saying, okay, I know what they are trying to accomplish.
Talk about that perfect trifecta, and why is that so important for internal communicators to shift to that mindset?
Absolutely. Well, I do think of it as a three-legged stool, and there's internal communications, there's HR, and there's IT. And when that's all working well together, it does become the perfect trifecta, because those three, we have different audiences, right? And we have different things that we're focused on. Well, I would say IT does. They certainly have an external lens, right? They're thinking of things through the customer lens, but they're also thinking through the employee lens. HR, obviously, absolutely about the employee, and internal comms are employee communications. So when you start engaging in a way that is, we're all focused on the employee, that's where the synergy comes from, right? So if we can get into partnerships with our business partners on both of those sides to again, learn what their goals are. What are they trying to accomplish? How is what they're focusing on going to impact the employee? And then when we get the synergy of the three of those going together, and we're all focused on increasing employee engagement and the employee experience, that's when the magic happens.
Okay. All right. I love that. I love that three-legged stool. So in all of this, I should remind our audience, this season, we're going to be, eliciting all these key insights and putting this stuff in a tangible cheat sheet. I learned then doing the Rise and Shine series when we were on the road last year, everybody loves a template and a checklist. So we're going to have, again, if you're driving, if you're en route on your way to work this morning or on your way home listening to this, you don't have to write anything down. We're going to put all this in a cheat sheet, and it'll be available on our website at internalcommspro.com. So, all right. I love the three-legged stool. I love this common denominator that you're talking about, like sharing this through the employee's lens, like, hey, we've all got the same goal. So I'm getting geared up. I've got the right mindset. I want to go to IT or HR. What do I need to know before I knock on the door or pick up the phone or email them?
I think as communicators, I feel like we're on this cusp, especially in the internal paradigm, right? Like, we always have the conversation of, we want to be a strategic partner. We always want a seat at the table. But I feel like we are just right there in our industry of, it's just about to shift. And part of that is technology, of how do we look at all these organizations are going through a digital transformation, right? It's like happening globally. We're all going through this together. And there's the external lens of this and how that impacts customers, but there's the internal focus as well. And how is what we're doing from a technology aspect going to impact the employee base? So I think it is important for our communications expertise to not just be focused on communications. We've got to start learning a little bit about IT. Now, you can take that, right? Someone can take that to the extreme. I would say I'm novice at best. I'm certainly not proclaiming to be an IT expert, but I'm trying to learn as much as I can so that I can speak the language, or enough of it that I can engage in a meaningful conversation with our IT partners.
Now, I know what you're all thinking, and I thought the same thing. So I asked the question, what language? What are the IT terms that I needed to know? My confidence is lacking in this area as I think of coding as some sort of greater than, less than, insert a smiley face type language. I could feel my imposter syndrome getting triggered, and I confided in Natalie about that too.
So I do think we have a responsibility as practitioners of communications to own some of that, to learn about the trends, to start learning about artificial intelligence and how that might play into the communication space and how we can add value to our partners, both on the HR and the IT side. So again, right, I mean, depending on your level of passion, I mean, I'm certainly not suggesting you need to go get a degree in IT unless you're really into that, and more power to you. But I think you've got to at least know some of the trends and the things that are occurring so you can have the appropriate conversation. And then I think we can kind of dovetail that into even the HR space, right? HR is evolving as well. HR is starting to use data more than they have in the past. And artificial intelligence is starting to play in that too. And not in the, creepy big brother way, but in a proactive, how can we use that data and what we know about our employees to help them to have a better experience at work?
I think another core issue is this idea of imposter syndrome, and there's a lack of confidence there, right? Like, I don't know what I'm talking about.
Do your homework, but I think you just said, we don't want to also show up as know-it-alls either, because there's probably few of us that are going to know that space well enough. I think it's in the spirit of being able to have a meaningful conversation, but certainly I don't think you need to know it all, nor do you want to come across that way, because that probably wouldn't, be the best way to go. Maybe there's already something in your tech stack that we're only, the company's only using maybe 60% or 50% of it. And there's another 20% that solves a need that you already have as a communicator. And then you're piggybacking on something that's already funded in the organization, because all communicators know not only do we fight for sometimes the seat at the table, but we really have to fight for budget.
Yeah.
So I think there's an opportunity as people are thinking about how do I engage with IT partners? There may be resources in things that they're looking at that you don't even know exist. But how are you going to know if you aren't engaging in the conversation? And then some type of an operating rhythm of meeting with those IT partners and building relationships so you can know, again, what are their goals? What are their focus? What are their strategies? What are they working on for other business units that you may be able to tap into and benefit from?
Like, what do we say? Because I would get so nervous, because I do feel like they know more than me, because they know about, API code this and tech this and AI this. And so I would get nervous to knock on the door. Like, I know this sounds insane, but how do I actually go do that? Do you have any, give me something that I would say, start the conversation?
Yeah. Well, first, let's go back. Let's just totally back up for a second and boil this down. And I do know where that it can be intimidating. But first of all, we're all human, right? Let's go back to the common denominators, as you mentioned. Yeah. We're all human first, and humans are built for relationship. So there's that, right? So the other thing is you have that in common with your IT person or people. And guess what? You're an employee and they are an employee. And I betcha you both would say, man, I think we do too much email at this company. Or, oh, it'd be so nice when we do open enrollment. If I only had to, once I did it, I didn't have to hear about it 50,000 different times in different ways because I've already taken that action. I think we can come to, again, some common ground of identifying together and through each other that one, we're both human, and two, we are both employees. So already coming at that, you not only have a common denominator, but you want a good experience as an employee, each of you. So it helps to have and engage in a conversation that leads you towards that.
I think that's so good.
And maybe, and of course, there's variability here, right? If you have a specific need, you hey, no, we've got to move forward. And there's a business need for what you need to do from a communication standpoint. Of course, that engagement with IT might be a little different at the beginning. So I understand the audience listening. Everyone's at different phases and different places with how they're engaging with IT, or even with HR. But I do think it's worth, again, sitting down and just having the conversation of learning.
Yeah.
What is it you're trying to accomplish? And then again, go back to that common ground. I doubt that we could find very many communicators listening that wouldn't say that they are looking, when they think about their employee audience, they want the best communication experience for those employees. And I think if we boil it down to ourselves, it's what we all want, right? We all consume information differently than we did 5 years ago. We consume information differently than we do now than we did 2 years ago. So I think what we're all striving for and what we all want is, I want to be communicated to when I want, how I want, the way I want, right? That's kind of an expectation of us as people now.
Right.
That's what social media has done, and that's what tech has done for us.
Right.
And I don't think you would sit across the table from anyone who wouldn't say they want that same thing.
Yeah.
So again, you already have this instant rapport and this instant commonality, and I think it helps to have a really unique conversation to say, that's what I'm trying to get to as someone in communications. You're an expert in IT. You're an expert in HR. How can you help me do that?
Yeah. I love that. So to recap this point, go in with a spirit of learning. And I think yesterday when we were talking to prep for this call, really of authenticity, like I want to learn about this. I want to learn what, is driving your part of the business and what your challenges are. And then to find that common ground with this employee lens, since that's kind of the heart of this three-legged stool, that everybody's the unifying piece. And then that last piece, particularly with IT, I mean, to remember that folks in IT typically love to solve problems. So I think to find a common problem with you're talking about, hey, employees are used to this consumer experience, and now we're feeling pressure to upgrade that, internally. How can you help me do that, and vice versa? I think, do I kind of have those three things right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And I think maybe another thing for us to think about is everybody has competing priorities. And maybe this is not accurate, but I'm going to put it out there anyway. I think our IT partners have a lot of competing priorities, right? Again, no matter how big the organization, because again, everything is evolving. Every organization's going through some type of transformation when it comes to technology. So again, I think it just is really important as we engage in these conversations to have the business mind in place. Yeah. Right? We are business people. We're not just communicators, and understand there are competing priorities. So one, I think patience is important. I think understanding that we're striving for progress, not necessarily perfection.
That's good.
When we think about technology is really important.
Circle is a proud member of the Internal Comms Pro Collective and sponsor of the Internal Comms Pro podcast. With an easy-to-use API, engineer assistance, and 24-hour support from customer success teams, Circle takes away the difficulty of working with your IT department so you can concentrate on where your work really matters, your employees. Learn more at circle.com. That's CERKL.com.
So let's go back to this thinking like a business partner and go to HRs.
I believe that internal communications people can be, if they choose to be, right, can be strategists, and they actually can influence the bottom line. And when we talk about bottom line, that may not be necessarily profitability, but it might be back to decreasing attrition, right? There are ways proven that through artificial intelligence, there is a way for us to be truly strategic partners to our HR business partners through the data that we can provide through certain resources and tools that really come from technology.
So I pushed Natalie a little harder to give me an actual example so I could gain clarity around artificial intelligence. I later became less intimidated because I realized I used artificial intelligence every day. It's how Netflix knows I binge watch The Crown. But I needed an example of how this emerging technology would fit into my work as an internal communicator.
I'll get maybe to boil it down to an example, because I think everyone can relate to this, because even if you're a consultant, you probably worked for a company at one point or another, and everyone goes through open enrollment, right? And it's, and I've had this discussion with our head of HR. It's like, okay, open enrollment, it impacts everyone, important to everyone, right? We all want to know what our benefits are, what are our options. It's super important to us personally and professionally. But from a communication standpoint, my goodness, we are archaic in how we do that, right? How most organizations are doing that, which is, okay, we got to let everybody know. And we do that in a multitude of ways. And it's usually, a 60 to 90 day window. And we just hit people over the head, right?
Yep.
Here's the information, here's the information, here's the information, here's the information. What we want and what we need to get to and where we can provide value as communicators is when we find the technology that can help us stop that when it gets to the point, we still have to push the content. So I'm certainly not saying that goes away. But once a person has engaged, once an employee has taken action, they shouldn't have to see it again. They've already done what we've asked them to do. And that's what we do as communicators. We put information out, and what we want that to do is to provide information. We want to drive behavior. We want people to take action. And once they've done that, that box is checked. We shouldn't have to be able to give them that information again. So I think that's just one example of where that starts to change the conversation with HR. And I know communicators struggle with this, and I think whether internal or external, we struggle with this, is sometimes we get pigeonholed into a tactical role. And it's almost like chicken and egg. It's like, well, if I had the tools, I could show my strategic value. And but I can't show my strategic value because I don't have the tools. I think it's just starting to engage in the conversation. And then where can you provide value? Where can you show data and metrics? Even if you don't have the resources, because I know, and I talk with a lot of small companies, it's like, yeah, but you work for a great big company, and I work for this little company and I'll never get budget. Okay, then what do you have in your arsenal that you can start having those right conversations about the value that you add to the organization? And that can be surveying.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't always have to be. I mean, we need technology. I'm certainly not saying that. And if we really want to get there as communicators, it is going to be tapping into analytics and data and this whole realm of artificial intelligence and how we use that in a meaningful and accurate way.
Right.
But it doesn't take us away as communicators from the simple things that our employees need as well.
Right.
Sometimes a flyer works just as well as, a nifty little mobile app.
The key here that I'm hearing you say is that the internal communicator can start repositioning themselves with the language that they start to use and knowing, hey, I need to know a little bit about IT and what the latest trends are and to have that common ground. But I also know that I need to know what's driving HR and their value really does lie within retention, attrition, and those things.
Going in with the spirit of learning and trying to understand what the challenges are or the goals are of your partners just helps to have a really engaging conversation. And then doing that, obviously the same, right? You want to learn from them, but you also want to know them to know what you're trying to accomplish. And that's where that synergy really starts then to take place. I think in those authentic kind of relationship building opportunities, that's when you can start having meaningful conversations that drive to the outcomes that everybody is trying to achieve. I do think it is important, and I would encourage people to make that a part of their operating rhythm. We're still at the beginning of the year. So I think as you're thinking about, how's my 2020 going to be different than my 2019, I would encourage everyone to be intentional about how you're going to engage with your HR business partners and your IT business partners in a meaningful way. And that means planning and scheduling for it, because if not, you'll be in December and go, oh, I never did that.
So what do you do there? I mean, I'm getting back to my tactical checklist here, Natalie.
Sure.
Do you schedule then like regular meetings with these folks or what, how do you do that?
I do. And I would encourage that. And I realize, again, we've got different sizes of organizations and, we have a massive IT team, where I am. So, but I think it's identifying who are the right people that you want to start having a conversation with, and invite yourself to the table. Now I don't mean, if you're more a junior level, I'm certainly not saying go show up at an executive level meeting. Don't do that. Don't do that at all. That's not what I'm talking about, but it's identifying who are the people. And I think, people like to talk about what they do. They usually, right? Yeah. We do. We're in communications because we love doing communications. People are in IT because they love IT, and people love to, I think, help each other. I think most people like to help other people. So I think if you go in with the spirit of, hey, I would like to sit down and learn more about what it is that you're doing in whatever it is, HR, IT, what you're trying to accomplish, what your goals are, because I'm trying to learn and I want to know more, because I think there may be a meaningful way for us to engage and to impact employees.
Yeah.
Who can say no to that?
Yeah, that's
Who could say
excellent.
no to that, right? Let me buy you a cup of coffee. I mean, it's kind of like sales 101, right? Of starting to build the relationship internally. And again, in an authentic way. I do try to focus on relationships. I just believe that to the core that whether it's professional or personal, everything boils down to relationships. So that's probably my starting point with everything. And then I think it's just, learn. I try to be focused constantly on how do I learn. And it is easy, I think, for communicators to get into, I don't want to say self-deprecation, but
Right.
almost to like, we now, there is I see this as sometimes there's a tendency of, well, we never, we're never invited to the table. We're always seen as tactical. We kind of sometimes can pigeonhole ourselves into this almost victim mentality. And that's a dangerous place to live as a communicator.
Yeah. Join me in Vegas as I'll be moderating the Advanced Learning Institute's 4th Annual Digital Workplace Summit, Engagement Strategies for Employee Communications, March 31st through April 2nd. Hey, what happens in Vegas won't stay there because I'll be sharing all the insights via Twitter at InternalCommPro and our website at InternalCommsPro, where you can get all my ALI cheat sheets. Hey, even if you can't go to Vegas, I'll be taking the podcast on the road there to capture the best experts, the insights, and all the tips. So keep listening to all of our episodes right here on Internal Comms Pro, the podcast. Okay, so let's jump back in and see how Natalie and I wrapped up our conversation.
So I do think it's important as we think about our role is don't assume, and start being proactive in how you educate people about what you do. You want to learn what they do. We've already talked a lot about that. Right. But the other part of that is making sure you're educating them on what you do and how you can provide value to them. Here's the thing. When you're talking to your IT partners, and especially HR, because we both are focused on employees, you can add great value to what they do. You can tell the stories behind the work that they do. So you have a critical role, not in just, having them help you, get to whatever it is you're trying to do from a technology standpoint or the employee experience, but you can really help them tell their story internally as well. Yeah. So it's really a win. It really is a win-win all the way around if you can build these strong relationships with your partners across. And I would say too, if you really can build this three-legged stool and you get to a point where you're like, man, we have such synergy and, the real magic and where you'll like get goosebumps and be like, oh my gosh, this is working, is when you've got an IT partner or an HR business partner that comes back to you and says, hey, I was in this meeting and they brought up this and that seems like an opportunity, for you guys to tell this story. Then you're like, oh, it's working, because you're thinking about each other's work and what you're trying to accomplish and getting to that. And they're thinking from a different lens than they ever have before. And that goes right back to everything we talked, is back to the basics. It's about how you're building those relationships, how you're having the conversations and learning about what their strategic goals are, what they're trying to do, and really finding that synergy between the three of you of, hey, we're all focused on helping build a better employee experience and being more engaged at work. How do we do that collectively?
I'm Sara Jackson, and you've been listening to Internal Comms Pro, the podcast. If you haven't yet, join our community to get today's tips for free by visiting our website at internalcommspro.com. Thank you for being part of our community.
Internal Comms Pro podcast is produced by Super Awesome Media. Our theme music is Hard Fought Victory by Purple Planet Music. Thank you for listening.